Assalamu alaikum and welcome to the Finance Forum with myself, Abdu-Raof Hanslo. This is a weekly finance show that we'll be airing to unpack the pertinent finance issues within our community and society at large. Today we discuss gold and the format of gold and how really to invest in the commodity. So in today's program we intend to unpack both gold shares, company gold shares, as well as the actual commodity. And joining me in studio today is none other than Mr. Adnan Bazir of SA Bullion. Welcome, Adnan. Assalamu alaikum to you.
Wa alaikum salam, Abdu-Raof, and thank you for having me on the show. And I believe it's your first show. Quite excited to be here.
Absolutely, and we obviously pleased to have you in studio with us as well.
Thank you.
Let's start out. Ultimately, gold and SA Bullion, there's a good relationship there between the two.
Yes.
Can you give us some history on, firstly, SA Bullion and where you came from and how it was started and the need for it?
Sure. I mean, if you think of gold, I mean, it's inherently it's been a success story in South Africa. And if you look at the bullion, gold bullion being the Krugerrand coin in South Africa, started back in the late 60s. And if you ask the average South African whether they've ever been able to acquire the Krugerrand coin, there would be very few that have mentioned to have actually achieved that. So the business itself, SA Bullion, incorporated in 2005, so it's about 10, 11 years now. And the group of directors and partners that have started SA Bullion, they've basically engaged and explored the opportunity of looking at Krugerrand as an investment opportunity for themselves firstly. And they've engaged the Reserve Bank back in the early 2000s. And lo and behold, I mean, it's really, I mean, back then it was quite a challenge to be able to acquire this commodity itself. And they then formed this mainstream investment service that specializes in bullion gold. And that's when SA Bullion started in 2005. And they've basically set up an agreement with the Reserve Bank and Rand Refinery to be able to offer Krugerrand investing for the typical South African. And I mean, more recently, we're seeing more an uptake of international clients as well.
Now, I know that gold has a direct correlation to our Islamic values.
Yes.
There's always been a relationship between the two. From the start of our religion, of the time of the Nabi, there was a very close correlation between the two.
Yes.
Trade was done in gold. And I believe that you have a nice story to tell us
Sure.
concerning that.
I mean, our one of our sort of key messages to investors and partners that we deal with is that if you look at gold as a commodity and specifically as a monetary unit, exchange, means of exchange for acquiring business or buying goods and services, back 2,000 years ago, so even before the time of the Prophet ﷺ, if you look at gold being used as a monetary unit, it could feed a family for a month. And if you look at in today's time, 2016, you're looking at a gold 1 ounce coin, troy ounce, it could feed a family for a month. You know, besides all the other expenses involved, it could feed a family for a month. So that's the unique characteristic of gold itself. And then if you're looking more closely, being the Krugerrand, that at current values it's around about 19,000 Rand. So you'd be able to feed a family for a month on that.
Yeah, you know, in the context of our community,
Yes.
we come from a community that's fairly well off. We come from a community that has a specific interest in the commodity itself.
Yes.
So when looking at anyone wanting to enter the gold market, what gold should they be looking at and what should they be buying at this current time?
So I mean, there's various forms. I think with the financial sort of innovations that have happened over the past few decades, More commonly, the main sort of way of accessing gold was to buy physical gold, that being gold bars or gold coins. Bearing in mind that you also have the collectible types, being your medallions and your sort of proof coins, that has some affiliation with a specific event that has happened or a leader. So specifically speaking, in South Africa, we have the Mandela coins or the de Klerk coins. And you find that internationally as well with other political leaders. So that's on the one side, being your physical coins and your physical gold bars. The other more modern sort of approach has been the exchange traded funds, which is your ETFs, where you're tracking the commodity prices or the gold index. So all that you're investing is in a fund or a debenture that tracks the gold price. And as that performs or underperforms, that's what you are investing in as an investor. The other opportunity is to look at the gold mining companies itself. So you're not investing specifically in the commodity being physical gold, you're investing in the companies that are actually extracting this commodity locally and globally. So I think those are the three mainstream sort of gold investing.
You touched on something very important, and that being basically that you have two separate markets. Yes. Ultimately, you have the hard currency, that's the hard commodity, that's the gold bullion, and then you have the gold companies, yes. And we can mention quite a few listed on the Johannesburg Stock Exchange. So, is there a correlation? I mean, if we look at the spot prices every evening on the news, that would give us basically the bullion price.
Yes.
Is there a correlation between the bullion price and the performance of these gold companies, or is it totally separate?
Sure.
And how should the community be looking at bullion compared to your gold stocks? I mean, any one of our community, we're quite investment savvy. Yes. Today in our society. So I would expect if we walk into the community today, out of 10 people, we're going to find one person that's invested in a major gold company on the stock market.
Yes.
But on the other hand, we're also going to find 2 or 3 people sitting with Krugerrands in their safe at home. 100%. So is there a correlation between the two?
So to answer your question shortly, I mean, there isn't really a correlation, because one needs to understand that when you're talking about the gold mining companies itself, you're investing in the ability of the company to profitably generate cash flow into the future, and that's why you buy a share in a company, or any company for that matter, is that you're buying based on the future earnings of that business. So when you're buying an Anglo or Harmony Gold or any of the PHP Bulletin, it's the ability of those companies to do successfully well in what they do, is mining commodities. When it comes to gold itself, you're buying the content of the commodity itself for what it is valued at. So there isn't directly a correlation between the two. However, we've seen beginning of this year, 2016, gold has had quite a surge, and gold mining companies have followed suit to that sort of performance of the gold price. At the same time, if you look at the resource sector in South Africa, and with all the labor issues and political issues that have gone through, they've been tremendously under pressure, and it's actually become much more it's become burdensome in terms of extracting this commodity, gold specifically. I mean, as a resource itself, it's also becoming very scarce. I mean, they have to go 3 kilometers down underground. You need refrigerating, air conditioning. I mean, it's really it's hazardous for the mine workers itself. So the cost of production becomes more and more expensive. So when you look at investing in the mining companies itself versus the commodity, or holding on to the physical gold itself, yeah, there are two differences when we speak about the two.
And obviously, when we look at shares on the stock market, yes. The first thing that springs to mind is timing that share. The idea always from a stock brokerage point of view is to buy low and sell high. And I think that's what the major asset managers and investment managers try to ascertain when investing in specific shares, especially if it's for shorter periods of time. Is there a specific time to buy gold? Is there a good time to buy gold as a physical commodity? And is there a bad time to buy gold? And where are we currently sitting? Is it a good time or bad time to buy?
Good question, Abdu-Raof. I mean, if you look at gold and why on an international scale, I mean, there would be sort of two viewers out there, you know, looking at gold as a commodity and one as a currency. SA Bullion's view is that gold should be seen as an alternative currency to paper money, to cash in the bank. And that's really where the true characteristics of longevity, store of value, a diversifier of gold being specifically comes to the fore. So when wanting to time the market as to when is a good time to actually buy gold bullion, it's a very hard question to ask. We'd rather prefer that investors should ask themselves, how long do they want to be exposed to gold, and should be seen as a long-term investment rather than speculating and coming in at a certain price and going out at a certain price.
In your opinion, Adnan, from SA Bullion side, future of gold? Do we have any feeling of exactly where gold's going to go in the future?
I mean, there's a lot of gold gurus out there and gold bugs, as they are called. We see a golden future for gold itself, being that, I mean, we're living in a very complex world, and the financial industry is also quite complex, and we'd like to believe that keeping things a little bit simpler and sort of passing on the honorability and freedom of normal people in their daily lives is the key to that. And through that is creating that financial freedom of acquiring and having access to physical gold as an alternative to the financial system, the banking system. And as we can see, markets in the advanced economies, developing economies being more and more under pressure, we see gold asserting itself, and it has been. I mean, the stats are there, the numbers are there, it's been shown through, I'd say, the past decade or two, that gold has a place in your portfolio, in your banking system, etc.
Well, we have to pay the bills.
Sure.
Time flies when you're having fun.
Yeah.
So we'll be back shortly. You're watching Finance Forum with myself, Abdu-Raof Hanslo, and my guest in studio, Adnan Bazir from SA Bullion. Stay tuned, we'll be back shortly. Welcome back to the Finance Forum with myself, Abdu-Raof Hanslo, and my guest in studio, Adnan Bazir from SA Bullion. Today we're speaking gold and gold bullion, so gold stocks and gold bullion. And just before the break, we were chatting briefly about the actual commodity and gold stocks. We're going to take this a step further and look at financial planning as far as where gold fits into the whole scenario when investing. So coming to you, Adnan, where we find South Africa at the moment is in a financial crisis.
Yes.
Very similar to a few years back in 2008, 2009, when we had this entire financial meltdown across the world.
Sure.
I think more so affecting South Africa this time round. So from a financial planning point of view, where does gold fit into the scenario in our current pressurized state?
Sure. I mean, it's a very good question. I mean, firstly, I'd like to advocate that it's always good to be consulting with a authorized and certified financial planner, because in today's world we're living in a complex financial sort of environment, and to make investment decisions can always be a cumbersome one. So from a financial planning point of view, I mean, SA Bullion sees firstly gold as a monetary unit. So it's an alternative to cash in the bank. So its competitor is cash or money market for that matter. Within a financial planning portfolio, most likely it would be seen as your discretionary assets, and as a currency hedge and a diversifier, that would be your component your asset allocation that's going to cash, probably 20%, depending also the investment appetite of the investor itself. It could be anything from 10% up to 50% of that cash holding of their portfolio. So besides the equity exposure they have, bonds and property, or any other tangible investment asset, just the cash component, if we're looking at within that portfolio of a client or an investor, is roughly between 10 and 50%.
Now, you briefly touched on various sectors of investing, and that would be equities, bonds, and property, and so on. So my question to you now is of a two-natured approach. So number one, where would gold fit into the scenario as far as your asset allocation is concerned? Sure. And I know this is going to be a bit more complex to explain. What percentage of our assets should we be allocating towards gold? I know there's a lot that depends on that. Yes. So if you could maybe just take the viewers through number one, where gold fits into the portfolio, yeah, and what ultimately exposure one should be looking at.
Sure. So I mean, from a typical investor point of view, I mean, your biggest assets that you, I mean, generally speaking, would have is the home that you own, property, and your pension fund. If you in the corporate sector, the company you're working for, they would provide you with a pension fund. Those two assets, I mean, property exclusively, and then if you're looking at your pension holdings, I mean, there it's kind of confined to the limitations of the pension fund itself or the retirement fund itself. Then we're looking at the extra monies that clients have or investors have, and that most likely you'd have some sort of offshore exposure. So being exposed to another currency other than your local currency. So specifically speaking to a South African investor, you'd then be looking at US dollar, the euro, the pound, or any other emerging market currency outside of South Africa. So that component of your portfolio and the cash holding, generally speaking, from a prudent investor would probably have about 50% in liquid assets being cash. More aggressive investor would probably be sitting with close to nothing in terms of cash. But if you're looking at that cash component, that would be the conversation you'd have with your financial planner. We would recommend, or we're looking at a considerable portion of between 10% and 20% being in physical gold. So if your portfolio is making up, let's say 30% in cash, then 10 to 20% of that 30% is in gold bullion, and the other portion would be in money market, which would then be in paper money, paper currency.
Which brings me to my next question. Ultimately, when we approach a financial advisor or financial planner, and we disclose the fact that we have intentions to invest, the first question that gets posed to us as an investor is, what time frame are we looking at investing in? When looking at investing in gold,
yes,
what time frame should we also be looking at, and where does that time frame sit? Is it medium to long term investments, or can we invest for short term periods?
So I mean, the success story of gold bullion itself, I mean, for the past 10 years, it has, if you're looking at inflation of about 6 to 7%, gold has outperformed that with a real return of closer to 10%. In rand terms, if you look at it from a US perspective, as gold is priced in US dollars, it has done, for the past 10 years, it has done 8% versus cash in the bank in the US. If you're earning US rates, it's at about 2%. So in excess of 2%, you're sitting about 6% return in US dollar terms, that being gold performance. So in terms of time horizon, because we see gold as a store of value, specifically speaking, it has that long-term longevity characteristic. So it depends also on your financial plan. Gold can be seen as that medium to long-term investment component. I mean, in our world, we have the smart saver, which is your young professional, just started a family. If he wants to put or create a facility where he's saving for his child's education in the next 15, 18 years' time, he can start a gold bullion facility. The same with a mature investor that doesn't necessarily need to touch any of that portfolio. They can leave that for the next generation, for their grandkids, etc. So we would definitely advocate a longer term view.
Then I know that SA Bullion offers a facility for gold,
Yes.
to purchase gold. So firstly, what type of gold are you buying when purchasing from SA Bullion? And what happens to the gold? You know, in today's environment, we find ourselves in a security dilemma in South Africa, whereby our houses are being broken into on a daily basis, and we find that there's so much crime in society. I would be from a personal point of view, I would be very uneasy to keep large quantities of gold in my safe at home.
Yes.
That's if I have a safe at home.
Yes.
But I would be very uncomfortable keeping that on the premises due to theft and the risks of it. What facility can SA Bullion offer to mitigate that risk?
I mean, where we are today is that we could regard the facility and the value offering to clients as the perfect facility. I mean, it's quite unique, being SA Bullion a specialist bullion investment manager. Currently in South Africa, it's the only kind for the time being. We don't know, whether any other competitors will be popping up. But it was exactly to address those type of issues, was around liquidity, having access to. So what we deal in is the one ounce Krugerrand coin. I mean, there's about 7 or 8 bullion coins of that nature that you find globally. I mean, you have the Chinese, the Panda coin, you have the Canadian Maple, you have the American Eagle, etc. So if you're looking at the South African coin itself, it's the Krugerrand, 1 ounce, and we have a relationship with the Reserve Bank and the Rand Refinery, which is the largest gold refiner in South Africa. And through that, we've created this 360-degree facility that looks at dealing, vaulting, and management of your gold bullion as you acquire this as an investor. And from as little as 500 rands a month to being able to put down a lump sum to acquire your first Krugerrand. These are the type of investors that we can cater for through this facility that speaks to security, that speaks to liquidity, that speaks to the supply of Krugerrands, and delivery as well. And I think we've basically encompassed all of that within the facility that speaks to both faith-based investors and your normal investor.
From I think the most common investment today that people make is a unit trust investment, and the reason for that being that it's very liquid.
Yes.
It's very easy to redeem your money from the investment. It's very easy to cash in on the investment. Briefly, from your side, we are running a little bit out of time, so if you could just give a quick synopsis of exactly the liquidity of the commodity, the gold commodity, when investing with SA Bullion.
So with SA Bullion, we obviously have this relationship with the Reserve Bank, as gold, the Krugerrand is a legal tender. The Reserve Bank, sees that as a monetary unit, and because of that, the liquidity arrangements that we have allows us to have a 48 turnaround time. When clients want to cash in their gold bullion, we'll be able to facilitate that process, and within 2 to 3 days, they can see their monies in their bank account. So it's as liquid as the unit trust or mutual fund investing.
Adnan, any closing remarks from SA Bullion side?
Sure. We've taken a traditional asset being the Krugerrand coin that dates back to the late 60s, And we've kind of modernized the approach and made this available to not just South Africans, I mean to international clients. And as a specialist bullion investment manager, I think there's definitely a golden future for gold bullion itself in your portfolios. And for the viewers out there, they should check out our website, sabullion.co.za. And if they do have any other questions, I mean, surely they can contact you as well.
You've been watching the Finance Forum with myself, Abdu-Raof Hanslo, and my guest in studio, Adnan Bazir from SA Bullion, and we've been speaking gold. Stay tuned for our next few programs and highlights of those programs to come. We look forward to chatting to you again in the future. From myself, wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.